Yesterday I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and we were talking about goals for 2025 and 26 and beyond. And we talked a lot about discipline and like what type of commitment certain goals require us to make in order to try and achieve them or not. And I said, John, I'm stuck. I was like, 24 kind of got off on the wrong foot. No pun intended. So we got off on the wrong foot a little bit. So I said, I need something to do for 25, like something that's really going to keep my mind focused on things and life and what have you. And we were talking about the discipline and commitment piece of what exactly it takes in order for us to achieve, whatever goal we set for ourselves. John's great masters athlete. He's a world champion thrower, Highland Games, strongman, grip strength extraordinaire. And he said, you should pick a goal, something that you want to do, that if you miss 2 consecutive days of training, it's going to severely negatively impact your outcome of actually achieving this goal or not. So we were on the phone and we were talking about it for, maybe a good 30, 45 minutes about what goals, we could set for ourselves. And doesn't have to be training specifically. But like, what are goals that people set for themselves that if they do miss 2 consecutive days of training, that it's going to totally derail everything? And I'm thinking back to when I was competing in powerlifting, and I used to compete like 3 or 4 times a year when I graduated from Fredonia. I graduated in May of 04. My first meet was in December of 04. And then while I was coaching as a graduate assistant at SUNY Fredonia, I was throwing and also still competing in powerlifting. So not conducive to throwing by any stretch of the imagination. And throwing probably didn't help me bench any better either. But when I looked back through my old training journals from back then, very rarely, if ever, did I even miss one day. And I used to have a powerlifting split of Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I would throw on the off days, not after a squat session. And I did that on purpose because I knew that I couldn't throw well after a heavy squat session, or a dynamic one for that matter. But it wasn't more so much about what I was doing. It was that I never missed a session. Like I didn't, right? I had access to a gym. It was free. I had a key. Just going to grad school and teaching, like there's really not a lot of responsibilities, right? Now looking back, I had all the time in the world, and it was relatively easy to do that, right? No kids, no significant other. Basically, I would come home, train, come home from school, train, or go to class, coach, go to class, have dinner, grade papers, if that, and do it all over again. And there was never a question or a doubt in my mind of what I was doing and how productive I was trying to be. Looking back now, as a single dad of 4, of 11, 9, 7, and 2-year-old, I just think back to like, man, I had so much time on my hands back then. So much time to do activities and all this training, excuse me, that as I reflect on it now, it's like, man, like I probably should have thrown farther. I probably should have been a more competitive power lifter because there weren't distractions. Now there are distractions, 4 of them. And granted, with the schedule and things, all that nonsense, it's just really sad to think about that this is where we're at. But getting back to the training, John said, pick something that if you miss 2 consecutive days, it's really going to affect you. And if you miss 1 session a week over the course of now until whenever you set the goal date, that it's gonna totally debilitate you. So I'm thinking of a half Ironman. I've been talking about it for a long time. I did the Olympic this summer, which was great. I would have gone a lot better if I didn't blow out my tire, I think I would have been more competitive, at least with my time. Not so much. It would have probably been more fun too, because I didn't have to work as hard with a flat tire for 20 miles, which could happen in a longer race also. But I'm thinking powerlifting, ego kind of kicks in, and then it's kind of out of the question, right? Because I was good back then. Like, I qualified for US APL Nationals, and I had, back in my day, I had all these New York State records for raw and single ply, US APL, the junior category. Like, I was somewhat competitive. And I don't know if ego kicks in and tries to get your body to do something that you haven't done in a long time, and that you have to train more accordingly for. And ultimately, really what it's going to come down to is the juice worth the squeeze? Is training for a powerlifting competition at the 242 class to qualify for Masters Nationals, is it worth it? Like, is that something that I want to do now as a 42-year-old? And by the time that rolls around, I would be 43 or 44. Triathlon, however, I will be in much better, at least interior physical condition, right? Heart health, lung health, like being able to train and compete for a long period of time, or at least train for the most part. And if I did miss a multitude of training sessions over the course of a week or a month, it would really debilitate my ability to finish the race in a specific amount of time, or even just hit the qualifier time, or not the qualifying time, the cutoff time. Because a lot of races out here in Western New York have qualifying times, cutoff times. Cutoff time to get out of the water, and then cutoff times for the bike, run, and time. And it would be difficult to justify all of that money to register and the time, and then not train for it, and then be pulled off the course because I wasn't in, good enough shape to compete. And I think with my 4 little distractions that I have, the 3 older boys, they're pretty self-sufficient, right? They're 11, 9, and 7. By the time the race comes around, they'll be 12, 10, and 8. And then you got the little man who turns 3 in December. So there are some options, there are some opportunities, but I think we are leaning towards doing a half Ironman race for 2025. When? Who knows? Probably July or August. But that might be the goal for 2025. Compete in and finish a half Ironman race. Now, that's a physical goal. There's a ton of other like professional related goals as far as coaching and the books and all that stuff that we just kind of need to wait for the dust to settle, if you will, before we get into more detail about the books and releases and just how that life works. But yeah, 2025 half Ironman race, I think that sounds realistic. It sounds reasonable. How about for you? What are some goals that you have for 2025 that you're looking forward to? Or maybe there's goals that you haven't set yet that you are thinking about. Are there goals that scare you that if you did miss a certain amount of training sessions, it would make it much more difficult for you to accomplish said goal?